It's Friday, April 4th, 2025, a Friday 5-pack and Ask or Tell Me Anything next on the AM Update. Well, congratulations one and all, boy and girl, lizard, and otherwise. You made it through another week. So did we here on the AM Update. Appreciate each and every one of you listening. Be sure, if you're not doing this already, give me a follow over on X at RealAMUpdate. Also on Instagram at RealAMUpdate over there. And I'd appreciate each and every one of you too. If you could, over the weekend, if you think of it, as you're listening to No Suck Saturday, maybe tomorrow, give me a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Each one of those matters a lot. Hope you all have a great weekend lined up. I know I do. We've got our first birthday party for our daughter, Abigail. That's coming up this weekend. Can't believe it's coming up on a year already, so that will be a lot of fun. Looking forward to that. All right, let's get on with the Friday 5-pack. Markets tanked yesterday on news of Trump's reciprocal tariffs with the rest of the world. Trump doesn't seem too bothered, though.
The markets today are way down, the worst day in years because of the tariffs. So how's it going?
I think it's going very well. It was an operation. Like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it. The markets are going to boom, the stock is going to boom, the country is going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal?
Donald Trump, President Trump, looking completely and totally nonplussed. I mean, he looks like he is in control. When it comes to this issue, he does not look like he's nervous at all. It just seems like to him this is all going according to plan. But he is facing some dissension from the usual suspects. Well, maybe one is not usual. Senator Cruz. He says the tariffs are a tax on consumers, and he's not a big fan of these things. He's not wrong. A lot of these costs will be passed on to the consumer, but the hope is that some of these companies who enjoy doing business in the United States will realize that fewer people can buy their products, and more people would be able to if they weren't so expensive, and they wouldn't be as expensive if they produced those products in the United States. But Cruz wasn't alone. Republicans and Democrats in Congress joined to introduce a bill meant to rein in President Donald Trump's ability to declare new tariffs. Trump followed through on his promise, of course, this week in increased tariffs. The Trade Review Act of 2025 was co-sponsored by Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of my home state of Iowa, as well as Democrat Senator Maria Cantwell of Washington State, and imposed a time limit on tariffs before they needed approval from Congress to continue. My question is, why is this the Trade Review Act of 2025? If this was such a big deal, if this was so important for the last 20, 40 years, why wasn't there a Trade Act, a Trade Review Act of 2005, 2015, what have you? If there was too much power, I should say, vested in the president to determine and make trade deals, why wasn't this addressed long ago? That's my question. Story number 3, that tragic story out of Frisco, Texas, that 17-year-old young white man, just senselessly murdered, stabbed to death by a 17-year-old black young man at a track meet. Why am I making those observations? That's the world that we live in nowadays. That is the world that we live in. You'd be remiss not to point out if the roles were reversed here. And I hate if the roles were reversed, I hate that guy on social media, but every now and then he's right. If the roles were reversed, there would be riots in Frisco, Texas right now. As it stands, there's not, because the victim was a white young man. Here is the mother of Austin Metcalf on Will Kane's show yesterday afternoon. She's responding to a question about her husband, who in the aftermath, immediately, the day of the murder of his son, he said he forgives the perpetrator. He said he forgave the perpetrator already. Here is his own wife responding to that.
I am not like their dad. I am so angry at that boy. It's just not fair. That's all I have.
I understand.
I'd like to say is
This is Austin Metcalf's twin brother.
Forgotten, but I'm not at that point yet to forgive that kid for what he did to my brother. Because, 17 years my best friend, just there in the blink of an eye, I lost him. So I'm not at that point to forgive and forget. but eventually I will. But I pray for his family. I pray that they understand what we're going through as well. I just pray for everybody.
The way that Austin Metcalf's twin brother tells the story is they were at a track meet. There was a young man from another school they'd never seen before. That's my understanding anyway. And this young man was standing in an area, like in a tent, with a bunch of valuables from Austin's classmate. And you're not supposed, if you don't go to that school, you're not supposed to be standing in this area. And so Austin asked this man I think his name is Carmelo, asked him to leave or to move or get out of there. Carmelo then responded by escalating and then pulling out a knife and stabbing Austin Metcalf in the heart. I don't know if I could ever forgive somebody who did something like that to my son. Certainly not the day of, like that father. And the Metcalfs certainly have opened themselves up to media interviews quite a lot over the last 24, 48 hours since the murder of that son and brother. I'm not sure how I feel about that as well. I wouldn't be able to do that myself. But just a senseless tragedy. Just a senseless tragedy. You know the story is probably the same with the 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony is his name, the suspect. He was arrested for murder. You know the story is the same. There's probably not a father or even family or even accountability in that young man's life. And hopefully he'll spend the rest of his days rotting in a prison cell. Story number 4, the United States Department of Education issued what it described as its final warning to Maine's Department of Education over the state allowing males to compete against females. You'll remember President Trump got into that public flap with Maine's governor right to her face a few weeks ago, citing President Trump's executive order to prevent women's sports from being infiltrated by men. The federal entity opened an investigation into Maine's education department in February. Now, the federal department said it's asking the state to fall in line with the federal mandate or face possible enforcement from the Department of Justice when it turns in the results of its Title IX investigation. So the Department of Education, what is left of it, not playing games with the state of Maine. Get the men out of the girls' sports. Story number 5, remembering Val Kilmer. One of the stars in one of my favorite movies. And it's gotten to be even more so one of my favorite movies as I've gotten older, which is Tombstone. Val Kilmer, of course, known for his roles as Batman and Batman Forever, as Iceman in the Top Gun movies. Also loved him in those movies. But again, my favorite role was Doc Holliday in Tombstone.
Not me. I'm in my prime.
Yeah, you look it.
You must be Ringo. Look, darling. Johnny Ringo. The deadliest pistolier since Wild Bill, they say. What do you think, darling? Should I hate him?
You don't even know him.
No, that's true, but I don't know. There's just something about him. Something around the house. I don't know. Reminds me of me. No, I'm sure of it. I hate him.
He's drunk.
Doc Holliday portrayed by Val Kilmer, the legendary actor dead at the age of 65 this week. What a great actor. The movie Tombstone, if you're a man listening to this and you ever feel like you're low on tea, just watch that movie. It'll set you right. Let's get to Ask or Tell Me Anything. We'll start with Bo. When we won the election the way we did, it felt like someone gave me a bucket of hope that we might actually see some good change and justice take place 2 months in. I feel like that bucket is draining fast. No Epstein list, judiciary coup, etc. Am I just being impatient? That question that you're asking, Bo, is the same question that I'm asking myself, particularly when it comes to the judicial coup. So I can see, on one hand, I can see how the Trump administration continues to go drip, 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 with setting up the country, priming the pump with the country for a showdown with the courts. But this has to happen soon. It has to happen like yesterday. That's my concern, is that if we haven't seen it yet, are we ever going to? Because there was a moment a couple of weeks ago with the planes full of gangbangers, that was your moment. And there was another moment. I can't remember what the issue was. I think it was, heck, even this week there was a moment. Federal judge says, no, you can't fire DEI employees at the Central Intelligence Agency. Pick your moment with these justices and tell them to go take a flying leap. But that has to happen. But I know what you're talking about. And this is what I was describing yesterday morning with one of the responses to the poll of the week. It's like being aligned with the Republican Party. Being aligned with this party is basically a few months of hope every 4, 6, or 8 years, followed by the rest of the time, oh no, we suck again, we suck again, we suck again, we suck again, over and over and over and over again. That's what it's like being aligned with the Republican Party. Okay, when we come back, somebody wants to know my take on the Apple TV show Severance. I haven't seen it, but I do have a take. Will we ever get honest answers about the health effects of things like phones and televisions and other big money technology? And someone also wants to know what's the most awkward moment I've had with a guest behind the scenes in my day job. A pretty good answer, and it's very embarrassing. That's coming up next. More Ask or Tell Me Anything. We will continue on with this interesting question from Griffin. How possible do you think it is to get honest answers on the health effects of big money technology? 5 minutes of contact with a phone with antennas on but otherwise idle was found to cause red blood cells to aggregate. Sends this article with a study that seeks to substantiate the claim that you just heard there. So I think we're far away from getting honest answers about things like vaccines. Multiply however long we are from that paradigm shifting. Multiply that by about 10 to 15. Because as big as the pharmaceutical industry is, the technology phone industry in particular is that much bigger. In fact, let's substantiate that. The top 10 pharma combined market caps, the top 10 pharmaceutical companies, their combined market caps, about $3 trillion. Top 10 electronics, their combined market cap, $10.8 trillion. Always follow the money. So as far away as we are from getting real answers about what our pharmaceutical companies are trying to inject or trying to get us to take every single day, and whether or not they're actually necessary or helpful, which I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to pharma companies. I want them to have the opportunity to do some good work. But as far away as we are from the questions, the serious questions that we need to have answered, particularly on the area of vaccines, however far we are away from answers with the pharma industry, that's how far away times 10 we are with big tech. Next question on Ask or Tell Me Anything. Where have we heard this before? I'm not a Zionist nor anti-Semitic. I just want this type of language to be tossed in the trash can of history. This is Rabbi Shumtov. He testified in front of Congress this week.
Anti-Semitism is not just an age-old prejudice. It is a contemporary crisis manifesting on campuses across the nation. It is not enough for individuals or institutions to merely claim they are not anti-Semitic. As my father once taught me, it is not enough for people, especially public figures, to be neutral or not be anti-Semitic. One must be anti-Semitic.
That is Rabbi Shumtov testifying in front of a congressional panel this week. And that's basically just critical racist theory, but with an anti-Semitic, or whatever the heck that means. An anti-Semitism bent. Because that's the exact same language that people like Robin DiAngelo use in their books like White Fragility. It's not enough to be not enough to not be anti-Semitic. You have to be anti-Semitic. That's just farcical on its face. So it's not enough. Let's just work this all the way to its logical conclusion. Anti-Semitism is gone. It's just gone. It's done. No one on the face of the planet is an anti-Semite anymore. That's not good enough for this rabbi? That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. And Matt, I agree with you. I'm sick of this type of language. Whether it's the racialists with certain pigment in their skin, or whether it's coming from this rabbi. That's ridiculous. Now let's go to this one. Jennifer Farrell asks, I would love to know your take on the Apple TV show Severance. The first season came out 3 years ago, but the second season was just released, and that's when I discovered it. I'd love to hear your opinion if you've seen it or heard of it. I have heard of it. I'm very interested in watching it. I started to see more of it when I think this latest season started to come out, and it looks really interesting. The premise looks really interesting, where there's a chip implanted in the employees of the certain corporation. It's implanted into their brains, and this chip turns on when they're inside at work. That's their innie personality, and that innie personality doesn't know anything about life other than when they're inside the building at work. And then when they go out, their outie personality flips on, and they don't know anything about life when they're inside work. The only thing they know about life is when they're outside of work. That's kind of the general premise that I understand from this show. So I was really interested in watching it. I probably will end up watching it at some point this summer. I think we're going to cancel YouTube TV once the tournament is over, but I might get Apple TV for a little while just to watch the show because it does look like a fascinating premise. Here's my concern, though. It has been so adulated. Is that even a word? There's been so much adulation when it comes to this show that I'm thinking there's no possible way it can live up to the expectations. So that's my fear with it. So once I do watch it, maybe I'll give a review, Jennifer. And let's end with this one. This is from Tiny Johnny. What is the most awkward moment you've had with a guest behind the scenes? Well, this didn't happen that long ago. In fact, I think it was last year, or it was the year before. We had then failed Arizona gubernatorial candidate Carrie Lake on as a guest. And back then I had a much higher opinion of her than I did now, and than I do now. And so just as a joke, I thought when we got her on the line, I think it was just a phoner, I would say, "Hey, Governor Lake, how are you, ma'am?" And I'm always very polite when I get guests on. It's always ma'am or sir. I just want the guests, it's very professional, but very respectful at the same time. That's what I always do when I get guests on the line. And here's what I actually said. And this is, since we've had kids, there are different days. There are different days when I'm really tired. There are different days when I'm not so tired. This was a tired day. And when you're tired, it's harder to talk. So I got her. She said, hello. I said, "Hey, Governor Lake, how are you, sir?" And she said, "I'm doing well, and it's ma'am." She was not very kind about it. That was very embarrassing, though, and I don't blame her for that. She's just so dumb. I'll tell you, though, there are a couple of people off the top of my head who I've had the pleasure of getting on and preparing them for their interview over the last 10 years that I've had my current position. There are a couple of people off the top of my head who are just over the top, but not in a weird way, very polite to me. And there are two guests that we've had on numerous times over the years. They go above and beyond of being polite and kind, exceedingly kind, but not in a weird way. Those two people are Eric Metaxas and Rick Santorum. Whenever I talk to them before they come on for their interviews, they are always exceedingly kind and talk to me like I'm a real human being. And that's not true for everybody. And not that I expect that, but it just stands out when it happens. Another one would be Congressman Chip Roy, but we know him a little bit better. So now that I've thoroughly embarrassed myself, what should have been left to the ether, never seen the light of day, now has seen the light of day. And since Ben has done such a good job of playing quietly and being very patient as I've recorded this episode, I'm going to invite Ben over now. Ben, do you want to come sit in front of the microphone? Yeah. Yes, you can join the podcast for a little bit, and you can eat your treat. Yes. Swedish. Yes, or Scandinavian swimmers is what they call them. So, Ben, can you talk into the microphone?
The duck says quack, quack.
Yeah, where did you get your duckies?
From the Recplex.
From the Recplex. That's fun. What are we going to do this weekend? Who's coming over? Yeah. Yeah, that's one person, but whose birthday is it? Abby's, and that's going to be so... Yes. All right, hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bella and I will be back at it again tomorrow for another edition of No Suck Saturday. Ask Izzy. Ask a nurse who knows any question you want about health, fitness, the modern medical industry. Ask Izzy coming up tomorrow on No Suck Saturday. Have a wonderful weekend. Otherwise, back at it again on Monday.